B.B. King's Lucille. Few guitars carry a name as well known as this one. The name itself came from a fire at a dance hall in Arkansas in 1949. B.B. King was performing when a fight broke out between two men. The king then realized that he left his guitar inside and ran back into the collapsing building to save it. And the next day, he found out that the two men had tragically passed in that fire and that they were fighting over a woman named Lucille. He named the guitar Lucille to remind himself never to do anything that stupid, which is running into that fire, ever again. King had a specific Gibson semi-hollow body without F-holes to reduce the feedback, and his custom Gibson ES355 suited him perfectly for that. Its semi-hollow construction gave it a natural resonance that worked with his signature vibrato style, where he bent notes slowly and let them breathe in a way that few guitarists have matched. Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstrat. So the Frankenstrat is one of the most replicated guitars in rock history, but the original one was built by Eddie Van Halen himself. He assembled this guitar in the late 1970s using a cheap Boogie Bodies body and a retrofitted neck. To achieve his signature sound though, he famously took a Gibson PAF humbucker out of a 1958 Gibson ES335. Eddie mounted it at a slight angle to ensure the pole pieces aligned with the wider string spread of the Fender bridge, finishing it in a now iconic black and white stripe pattern that he later repainted with red. The guitar became the vehicle for Eruption, the 2-minute solo on Van Halen's debut album that introduced two-handed tapping to a mainstream audience and influenced virtually every rock and metal guitarist who came after. Kurt Cobain's Jag-Stang. So the Fender Jag-Stang was a guitar that Cobain designed himself, working with Fender to combine elements of two offset models he already loved, the Jaguar and the Mustang. He sketched the design by literally cutting photographs of both guitars and joining the halves together. Fender built the first prototypes in 1993, including a sonic blue model that Kurt would take on the In Utero tour. He famously had that humbucker slanted to mimic the look of his favorite Mustangs. The resulting guitar had a short 24-inch scale length which reduced string tension. His guitar tech, Ernie Bailey, noted that Kurt found the body a bit thick and unbalanced, leading to several field modifications, such as shaving down the pickup switches so he wouldn't accidentally hit them while strumming. The guitar reached players posthumously as a production model and remained a cult favorite in Fender's catalog today. Jimi Hendrix Woodstock Stratocaster. The Fender Strat had already been around for over a decade when Hendrix started playing it in the mid-1960s, but he approached it differently from almost anyone before him. Because he was a natural lefty, Hendrix famously played right-handed guitars flipped upside down. This wasn't just a visual quirk though, because it flipped the staggered pole pieces of his pickup and the slant of the bridge pickup, giving them a warmer, fuller bloom, while the bass strings were picked up closer to the bridge, giving his low-end riffs a tighter, more aggressive bite. His Isabella Strat, the Olympic white 1968 model, featured Fender's 69 gray bottom pickups. Hendrix used a custom light to heavy string gauge and tuned down to a half step to E flat. Because the headstock was reversed, the low E string was now the longest string from the nut to the tuner, giving it a unique rubbery resonance and looser feel that contributed to his singing sustain. His performance of the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock remains one of the most discussed guitar moments in rock history. Tom Morello's Arm the Homeless. So this guitar Tom Morello calls Arm the Homeless is a heavily modified guitar that he Frankensteined himself in the early days of Rage Against the Machine. The origins of this guitar is that he originally commissioned a custom shop in Hollywood in 1986 to build his dream guitar. But then Morello actually hated the original result, leading him to swap almost every part except the body multiple times. It featured a blue alder body with hand-drawn hippos and a graphite Kramer-style hockey stick neck he found in a spare parts bin. To create his signature scratching effect, Morello used a 2-volume knob system or a specialized 3-way toggle switch which he used as a kill switch, turning one pickup's volume to 0 and rapidly flipping the toggle to chop the signal. Also a quick fact, the "Arm the Homeless" slogan was actually scrawled in marker just hours before a show at the Whiskey A Go Go music venue, which was pretty fitting for a man like Tom Morello, not gonna lie. For an entire generation of listeners, this guitar redefined what an electric guitar could sound like in a rock context. Brian May's Red Special. So the Red Special by Brian May actually started off as a father and son project in 1963 because they couldn't afford a high-end guitar, so they decided to build it themselves. And honestly, this project was a masterpiece of upcycling. The body was constructed from a century-old fireplace mantelpiece, the neck from an old table, and they even used a knitting needle for the tremolo tip and valve springs from a 1928 Panther motorcycle to provide tension for the bridge. Each pickup has 2 dedicated sliders, one for on and off and one for phase reversal. This allowed May to create out-of-phase tones that sound like a hollow screaming violin, a key to Queen's orchestral guitar layers. Combined with his use of a 6-pence coin as a pick and a Vox AC30 amp, the Red Special produces a vocal, harmoniously rich sustain that has remained May's primary voice for over 60 years. Steve Vai's JEM and Paradise in Art. Quoting from Steve Vai himself, "I didn't want to design a guitar, I wanted to design the guitar." In 1987, Steve Vai approached Ibanez with a vision that shattered the traditional design of the era. The result was the JEM 777 that paved the way for modern superstrats. Steve Vai was obsessed with pushing this guitar to the limit, and he insisted on a 24-fret neck with the last 4 frets scalloped for easier grip during high register tapping. The most significant mechanical leap, though, was the Lion's Claw tremolo cavity, a series of 6 deep channels routed under the Ibanez Edge bridge. This allowed Vai to pull the whammy bar up to the extreme pitches without the bridge hitting the body, a feature that defined the screaming sound of his Passion and Warfare era. The JEM also introduced the now standard HSH configuration with a custom 5-way switch that allowed for a split coil Strat-like tones in position 2 and 4. The PIA also replaced the monkey grip with a stylized pedal grip and introduced magnetic backplates for tool-free spring adjustments. A final nod to Vai's desire for a seamless, hassle-free connection between player and machine. James Hetfield's Iron Cross and Snakebyte. James Hetfield isn't just a guitar player, he's a rhythm machine. His later career has been defined by 2 signature ESP models designed to handle the most aggressive downpicking in metal history. The Iron Cross began as a DIY project, a 1973 Gibson Les Paul custom that Hetfield modified with a racing stripe and a gold hardware cross. When he partnered with ESP to make a signature model, they kept the set neck construction for maximum sustain but added a technical Hetfield twist, a dummy toggle switch on the upper bout to make him not accidentally switch pickup while he's playing. And the actual functioning switch is located near the volume knobs, where it is miles away from where he's actually picking. The Snakebyte is a radical revolution of the Explorer shape, featuring a more pointed aesthetic and a recessed neck joint for better upper fret access. The technical secret to both guitars is the EMG JH headset. These were designed to capture the thump and clarity of a passive pickup while maintaining the high output, low noise performance of an active one. Prince Cloud Guitar. The Cloud Guitar is one of the most recognizable and maybe one of the coolest instrument shapes in pop and rock history, and it was designed specifically for the 1984 film Purple Rain. Prince commissioned the first model from Dave Rusan at Knot Coupe Music in Minneapolis, based on a bass he had seen in a local shop. The design featured a distinctive flowing horn and a unique scroll in the headstock, creating an aesthetic that feels like it belonged in a fantasy world. Contrary to its light and airy appearance though, the Cloud was a heavy-duty technical workhorse. It was a neck-through body designed carved entirely from solid maple, making it quite heavy but providing the bright, snappy sustain Prince needed for his blend of funk and rock. The original Clouds featured a fixed scalar bridge for a rock-solid tuning stability. Prince eventually commissioned several versions in colors like yellow, blue, and peach, proving that even a custom masterpiece could be refinished to match every new musical era. Bo Diddley, Twang Machine. Bo Diddley didn't just change the rhythm of rock and roll, he literally changed the geometry of his instrument. While other players were playing Gibson or Fender, Diddley realized that an electric guitar body is essentially just a platform for the electronics, and it could be any shape that he wanted. Thus, the Twang Machine was born. So the Twang Machine was a professional evolution of Diddley's first DIY project, which was a guitar that he built in 1945 using a cigar box and the internal pickup from a Victrola record player. He then moved on to the rectangular shape for purely technical reasons, and as a trained carpenter, he built the first rectangular prototypes himself before collaborating with Gretsch in 1958 to redefine the design. The signature Gretsch G6138 features a semi-hollow body with a laminated maple top and a mahogany neck. It was then outfitted with Filtron humbuckers. This turned the Twang Machine into an all-in-one rhythmic workstation, providing that the guitar's form should always follow the artist's function.